Happy Monday, everybody. How you doing today? Welcome to Daily Distinction to kick off the last week of July. Sure glad that you are here. Thank you for being a part of this. By the way, if you're watching on the replay, I want to say this up front. I don't do it nearly enough. Thank you for watching on the replay. Most of our viewers do watch on replay. So as I'm giving shout outs to folks that are on live, please don't think I'm ignoring you. I truly appreciate you taking time to watch Daily Distinction. We got a great topic today. So really glad that you're here. Thanks to everybody jumping on right now. We're going to have a interesting discussion today about something that's really, really important, and that is, how do we grow trust? Why is it so important, and how do we grow that? You know, I think we'd be hard-pressed to find someone who says, oh, no, I'm not trustworthy at all. People don't trust me. I have no desire to be trusted. I mean, if you think about it, even a con man or a con woman wants to be trusted, right? I mean, everybody wants to be trusted. It's just that some haven't earned it, and some we are not willing to give it to. So today's topic is the topic of trust. Hey, Ernest, always great to see you. It was good to see you last night on the Ken and Glenn show with me. I'm really glad that you're here. And hey, Ernest, thank you for sharing. As my buddy Ken Walls says, sharing is caring. So if you care, please share. Thanks, Scott. Always great to see you. Thank you for being here today to talk about an important topic. So today's topic is trust. Why is it so important? How do we get there? How do we enhance the level of trust that we have? And got some amazing statistics on why it is so absolutely critical. So we're going to be talking about trust. But before we get there, I hope that you trust that the Ultimate Business Summit is going to be worth your time and your investment. And it is. I promise it is. We got a money-back guarantee. In fact, we want you there. It's Larry Winget, Randy Pennington, and myself. We are putting on the Ultimate Business Summit for the very last time. I've heard from so many folks that say, man, I mean to attend this. I want to get there. And then for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Totally understandable. But this year is different. First of all, it's your last chance ever to attend. We are not doing this again. As I've said before, you've heard me say, this is not the Share Farewell Tour where you're going to be seeing us together. This is it. We're great friends. We're all moving in different directions. So this is going to be the last time we do the summit. And to help celebrate that and to bring more value, because it's virtual this year for the first time and last time, Joe Calloway and Mark Sanborn and Lisa Ford and Simon T. Bailey. It's just an unbelievable group of speakers and thought leaders and best-selling authors that are going to be a part of this. Just check out ultimatebusinesssummit.com. I think you'll be blown away by all the value that you're going to receive. The general registration price is $197. The VIP ticket is $497. VIPs get a cocktail reception the evening before that we're doing virtually. They get a special VIP lunch. Matter of fact, the only place you're going to be able to hear Simon Bailey is at the VIP lunch. You're going to get the recording of the entire program. You're going to get a transcript of the entire program. You're going to get extra Zoom calls with us following as checkups to see how you're doing and implementing. All of that for that low price. But wait, there's more. As they say in infomercials. When you're checking out, just enter the coupon code Scott and get $100 off. Just enter the coupon code Scott. You get $100 off, which will take your registration down to $97. Look at that. It's under $100 to attend. The VIP is only $397. It's a great, great, great value. Oh, I hope he does, Scott. I think he'd really get a lot out of it. That's so important. Yeah, we're getting to that, Donovan. That's one of the things we're talking about today, in fact. Yes, exactly right. So trust is the critical element in relationships. I think all of us have probably been through a situation in a personal relationship where somebody that we trusted let us down. I have been in a business situation where a person I trusted with everything let me down. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's absolutely devastating, not just because of the ramifications of what happens when you associate with someone who is not worthy of being trusted, as it turns out, but just the personal devastation that you go through is really, really challenging. Trust is, I was honored to be named by Trust Across America as one of the thought leaders in the country on the subject of trust. And that was really an honor to be named to that that esteemed group with Stephen Covey and others. And it's a topic I think we need to be focusing on and we need to talk so much about because trust is so important. Not just to avoid that heartbreak of when it's, when we get let down, but more importantly, make sure that we're not the heartbreaker, right? That we're not the one who, even if there's a bad situation and somebody has to be let go in our business or we dissolve a relationship of some kind, at least if we're trusted through that and we handle it with trust, we're so much better off. Why is it important in business? Here's an amazing statistic from research that was recently done. Look at this. High trust company employees have 106% more energy at work, not injury. Oops. They have 106% more energy at work than those who work in low trust environments. They have 76% more engagement, 74% less stress, 40% less burnout. They even take 13% fewer sick days. That's what happens when you create a culture of trust in your organization. Your team performs better. Your team's more excited about working. They're more engaged in what they do. They're less stressed. They don't burn out. They continue to be productive. All of that is a result of engaging more trust. So what do we do? How do we grow trust? And I mean, I think sometimes we think, well, people either trust us or they don't, or we're either worthy of trust or we're not, right? We think of it too often as an either or. And here's one of the things that I think we often overlook. I think people that are trusted, it's like pregnancy. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You either are or you aren't. And I don't think you can be a little bit trustworthy or mostly trustworthy. And that was a problem I had earlier in my life. If somebody was kind of trustworthy, I gave them 100% of my trust when they didn't deserve it. And therefore, trust is not an either or situation. So we have to change that way of thinking that you're either trustworthy or not. You are either a person who inspires trust or you are a person that has a degree of distrust. So how do we grow the trust? How do we prove to people that we're worthy of their trust? And I think trust is something that has to be earned and not given. Charles, my ex-CPA, and the operative word here I think is ex, isn't it? Turned out not to be a trustworthy individual, and I'm still working on this 3 years later. Charles, we had a similar situation. And good grief, it just tied us in knots. I get it. Isn't it interesting? There are certain groups that you really want to give your trust to. Your CPA, you want to trust 1,000%. Your attorney, your spouse. I mean, there are people in your life that you want to trust all in. Really important. Ernest, you sell used cars in Houston with a guarantee on the car. Yes, they're two. It will make it off the lot. And if you don't make the payments, trust me, I'll come get it. I love that, Ernest. That is so good. Hey, Jerry, great to see you. Trust building is part of relationship building. It has to be built. Yep. Takes communication. It is something that we build. It is something we have to work on. It's something that we have to grow. So I read an article this morning by Marie Rosecrans. She's the Senior Vice President of Small and Medium Business Marketing at Salesforce. And she had some ideas about trust, and I've kind of incorporated, I didn't quote them exactly, but I kind of incorporated some of her ideas because it's a great thing to think about, great discussion starter with this. So I'm going to give you 4 things that I think we all need to be doing, 4 steps that we all need to be taking to enhance and to grow and to develop trust. Trust with our customers, trust with our colleagues, trust in our communities, trust with our personal relationships. Reminded me of a saying that my great friend, Dr. Nito Quabain at High Point University says about sales. He says, if you don't make the sale, it's usually one of 2 things. Number 1, you did not adequately explain the value the customer would receive from your product or service. Makes sense, right? If I don't adequately explain the value that I'm trying to bring to you, then why should you buy it? But here's the second one. Or they didn't believe you. Ouch. That hurt. You know, I mean, I was thinking about the time that we didn't get sales and oh, it's easy for me to take responsibility and say, you know, I just didn't explain it as well as I should have. I just didn't communicate as well as I should the value of what I'm trying to bring to you. I get that. I'm going to work on that. But when you stop and think, maybe they didn't believe you, right? Maybe they didn't trust what you were saying. That really hits you right between the eyes. That if they don't trust what you're saying, then how do they buy from you? Would you buy from someone you don't trust? Hey, Charles, thank you very much for that. Bruce, thank you very much for that. I appreciate you sharing this. And Bonnie, yes, I think you're so right. Trust is everything. It really is. Would you buy from somebody you didn't trust? And I think for most of us, the answer is in I won't say in every situation, but in almost every situation you wouldn't. For example, I might not trust the particular individual I'm dealing with at the Apple store, but I trust the company so much I could overlook that to access the product that I've already decided I desire, right? I mean, that I might do. But, you know, if I'm going to buy a new Volkswagen, and I go to one dealership and it just feels sleazy and not good at that dealership, I'm going to go to another dealership and see if I have a better feeling there. And because the cars are the same both places, I'm going to go with the dealership that I trust is going to provide the service that I desire. And that. So trust is so important. So 4 steps, 4 activities that we really need to focus on to help grow trust. Number 1, be open and honest about our failures and mistakes. Be open and honest about our failures and mistakes. We want those that we work with to be open when they make a mistake. But the only way that we can make certain that is true is when we're willing to be open and honest about our own failures and mistakes. Make sense? Why would someone be open with you about their mistakes if they think that you're never going to be open with them about the times that you've screwed up? Charles says, when I've lost a listing in the past, I'll call and ask why they decided not to work with me. Is there something I could improve on? Yeah, Charles, and I think that is such a great approach, particularly when you let them know up front, hey, this is not a sales call. I appreciated talking to you, and I don't want to make whatever mistake I made with you with my future clients. Could you give me just 2 minutes to learn more about my business? That is such a great approach. A quote from the Salesforce senior vice president is this: transparent vulnerability and openness are key to building trust. I don't know why. I think it's just human nature, but I think we have an innate growth of trust when somebody says, let me tell you where I screwed up. I mean, let me tell you where I noticed my own business grew. If somebody would call and say, tell us about tell us about your best event, I would also tell them about an event where it didn't go well, so that I could say, let's make certain that this doesn't happen at your event, because I didn't ask for the one of the things it's kind of a superstition. This is when meetings are going on, right? So I always worry about what people think about this, but I do it. I do it every time, and I explain every time. About 10 minutes before I go on stage, I will always say, tell me again the time frame. And at first, when I first started asking that, I would notice it would create some nervousness. I'm like, oh, gosh, he didn't do his research. He doesn't remember how long he's got to speak. He doesn't. So then I always added this story. I said, just something I want to reconfirm with you. Tell me one more time before I walk out there, what's the time frame of the speech? And one of the other things I ask is, okay, if they say, there's sometimes, for example, if I get introduced at 10 for a speech and they want me to speak for an hour and stop at 11, if the meeting is running long, I might not get introduced to 10 after. So there's an important question. Do you want me to take my full hour and finish at 10 after? Or do you want me to finish at 11 and get you back on schedule? And the meeting planner gets to decide. That's not my choice. That's the meeting planner's choice. By the way, if you are a speaker, prospective speaker, professional speaker, I think the number one responsibility for any speaker is you finish on time. You finish on time. To not do so is the most arrogant thing a speaker can do. To think that what you have to say is so important that everybody else on the program needs to cut their time for you. It's one of the most arrogant things any speaker can ever do. Finish on time. But the meeting planner gets to decide. Is that finishing on time going to 10 after because they're running 10 minutes late, or to get them back on schedule? But here's the reason I ask it. And I started telling this, and then all of a sudden everybody was great. I was doing a meeting a few years back, and I was, the contract, everything said 90 minutes. Well, because the executive wanted to speak that previously didn't want to speak, they gave him 45 minutes and cut my time to 45 minutes. Here's the problem. Everybody thought somebody else had told me. Nobody told me, right? And I've got the contract. I've done my research. I walk out. I got 90 minutes on stage. I'm about halfway through my speech. And all of a sudden in the back, I notice everybody's like pointing at their watch and they've got really angry looks on their face. They're giving me the cut sign. And I ended this. I was halfway done. And I just kind of, thank you. Great being with you. Good night. Walked off. And it was such an embarrassment. It didn't go the way I wanted it to. It didn't go the way they wanted it to. Well, when they realized what had happened and that no one had told me, everything was okay. They apologized profusely, but they've never asked me back because it just didn't go right. The audience isn't demanding to have this guy that seemed like he just quit halfway through his speech comp. So I always make it a policy now to ask that question right before I walk on stage to make sure there were no last minute changes, right? When I started telling them the reason I was asking this right before I go on stage is not because I haven't prepared, but it's because I want to make certain. And then I explain that little situation. And I've realized that now they trust me more. Now they trust that I've done my homework and that I'm trying to avoid a pitfall, not just for me. It's not my ego. I'm there to work for them, but to make certain that they have the presentation that they're paying for, to make certain that they have what they desire. But it wasn't until I told about the time that I had a bad experience on stage and my client and the audience didn't get what they wanted. When I was transparent and open and vulnerable about that, all of a sudden telling that became a trust enhancer, not a trust reducer. There you go, Darcy. Yep. The hungry crowd in the good crowd. That I have seen, the stories I could tell about folks that just think that what they're talking about is so important, so much more important than what anybody else could say. I had one. It was one of the last speeches I've given. And this guy had written a book. And not only did he exceed his time limit by 20 minutes, booked for an hour, spoke an hour and 20 minutes, dropped the F-bomb twice on stage. Crazy. Just crazy. So, openness, honesty. Here's the second one. When you are known for having the difficult conversations, being willing to do what it takes to have the difficult conversations, and you know what I'm talking about. It's when somebody doesn't perform the way they should, or when somebody doesn't accurately represent their effort, or when they miss a deadline, or whatever it might be. When you're willing to have those difficult conversations, it shows that you're a person that's worthy of trust. It shows that your values are in the right place. It shows that you will do what it takes to get the job done. And that's what people like and admire in terms of trust. Hey, Bruce, thank you for recruiting folks. That's very cool. Thank you for getting them here. I appreciate that. Charles, that's kind. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's so important. Janice, yes. Yeah. That's a great way to put it, Janice. I love that. And trust builds that psychological safety. And that's part of why we want to be trusted. It's why I love that term, psychological safety. It is building that in a way that the people that work for us feel like they can come to us about a mistake, right? Wouldn't you rather have somebody come to you about a mistake that they made and have a conversation about it and start fixing it right away than for them to think that what they need to do to keep their jobs to cover it up? that trust builds, Janice, what a great point. That trust builds that psychological safety. And that trust, see how these tie together? If they trust you, they're more willing to have that difficult conversation with you because they know that that's not something you run away from. And that is something you can be honest and open and vulnerable about. That creates trust. Here's number 3. Be flexible and adapt. You know, we have entered a different time I started saying business in the world. You know, people don't want to hear my way or the highway. Right? Some of you heard me tell the story before, but one of the things I've done quite a bit on stage is I will ask for baby boomers in the audience to applaud. Well, they clap, right? And now if you're Gen X, Gen Y, millennial, applaud. So they clap. I say, okay, I know there's fundamental differences between Gen X, Gen Y, and millennials, but can I lump you together just for this exercise, make it quick? I'm going to ask the same question twice. When I call on your generation, shout out your answer. Here's the question. Start with the baby boomers. Baby boomers, boss walks up to you and says, jump. You say, and invariably every baby boomer in the crowd shouts, how high? Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, boss walks up to you and says, jump. You say, and invariably everyone in those generations goes, why? Right? But if you're a how high person, expecting everybody that you work with to ask you how high when you tell them jump, you're in a world of hurt right now. Conversely, if you're a why person and you're trying to explain all the whys to somebody that just wants to tell you, they just want to be told how high they need to jump. They don't need all the whys. Then you aren't communicating accurately either. What we have to do is to be willing to be flexible to the needs and the demands of the current workplace. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, everybody gets to do anything they want. That won't work either. But we do have to be willing to be flexible and adapt. Now, flexible doesn't transcend your personal values. Flexibility does not transcend your moral obligations. We're not flexible about that. But we can be flexible about other things in terms of how we communicate, how we lead, and we need to adapt. That's part of growing trust. Yeah, exactly, Jeff. You're right. The trust factor falls in your personal life as well, right? I mean, all of these are, you make a great point, Jeff. All of these are, I'm kind of talking about business situations, but yet, man, take these 4 and apply them in your personal life, and they're right there as well, right? I mean, they're absolutely right there. These are all together for our personal lives. Yeah, wasn't that a great description, Charles? That what Janice said about psychological safety. That is so important. Hey, Ken, we were just talking about you earlier. Glad you are here today. Thank you. Hey, Mike, great to see you too. It was good to see you last night. Great to see you here. Yep, it's it does take us a while to learn, and trust is not something either that we're going to flip a switch. All right, today the goal is to be trusted. By 5 o'clock, I'm going to be the most trustworthy person in this building. That's not how it works, right? That's not how it works. These are things that, as Mike says, we practice and we get better. Growing trust is like, in a lot of ways, like playing a piano. The more you practice, the better you get. But the better you get, the more chances you get to perform, and the more chances you get to perform, the more the people, right? And it just grows and grows and grows. And that's, I think that's in part how trust works. Catherine, great that you're here. Thank you very much. Yep, we're talking about trust. It is so critical, so important. So be flexible and adapt. And then the fourth one is something that applies in becoming an iconic leader, an iconic person, an iconic organization, and that is the promise and performance have to be congruent. In other words, that what we say is what we do. We do what we said we would do when we said we would do it. It's the quote from Larry that I have in my book, Iconic. And here's how the senior vice president at Salesforce put it. She said, forging trusting relationships requires outlining your values and acting in accordance with them consistently and openly. And I read this and it begs the question, have you outlined your values or like many people have their goals, is it just one of those things that's kind of right up there? Yeah, I know about it. I got it. Yeah. But then when you're presented with a situation, see, we talked about this so often with goal setting, is that you'll set a goal, but if you don't write it down, you have no contract with yourself. And so you can kind of fudge on that, right? You weigh 240, you want to get to 210, you tip the scale about 218, and you said, well, what I really meant was, I'm going to lose some weight. Well, that's not what you really said, but because you didn't write it down and hold yourself to it, you might alter too easily, which typically means you're going to put the pounds back on, right? As opposed to a goal to get down to 210 and maintain it for a year, right? Okay, so that same principle applies when it comes to goals. Have you outlined your values? Is there somewhere in a notebook or in a folder or something somewhere that you say, here's the big rocks, here's the values? Are you, in fact, as an organization, even willing to post your values and act in accordance with them? Robbie Richmond is a friend of mine. He was an executive at Zappos, and Zappos has a policy that everything is posted, right? There are no secrets. That's one of Tony Hsieh's viewpoints, is there are no secrets. Interestingly enough, Robbie was trying to help some folks and launch a AA meeting, an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. But by the very nature of that, it meant it had to be private and not everybody could come. And Zappos called him in and told him that was against their values. And at first he got upset. How could it be against your values to not help addicted people? Oh, we're very willing to help addicted people. But one of our core values is that everything is in the open. And Robbie said, something that really struck me. He said that inspired him. And I thought, didn't that frustrate you? He said, no, I was so inspired to work for a company that said, this is our value. And despite how uncomfortable this current situation might be, we are going to live by the values that we posted. You might not agree with the value, but you got to admire the organization that will live based on its values. So now what do you suppose Robbie's level of trust is about the values at Zappos? He was all in, right? Because he knew they would live their values. That creates trust. That creates an enormous amount of trust. Yeah, and Ernest, you're right. Trust is built when someone else toots your horn, not you. Hey, Glenn, good to see you. Thank you for being here today. So to review what we talked about in terms of trust, we need to be open and honest about our failures and mistakes. We need to be willing to have those important yet often difficult conversations. We got to be flexible and adapt so that we can serve other people, because our willingness to adapt and be flexible to their needs helps them see our commitment to them, which grows and builds trust. And finally, we got to be congruent with promise and performance, because when those get out of line, it's hard to grow trust. You know, that was, of all the things that I learned in the research for Iconic, that was the thing that when the book Iconic came out, I was researching it for a couple of years before the book came out. And of all the things that I learned in the research, that was the most blow me away, unexpected thing that I learned, was that I had always heard that if you under-promised and over-delivered, you were killing it for the customer. And in fact, research proves that if you do that over an extended period of time, if you're always under-promising to over-deliver, the customer begins to see you as manipulative. They don't trust you. Why didn't you just tell them what you were going to do? They also view that under-promise and over-deliver as an effort to make yourself look like a hero, not truly help the customer. Isn't that fascinating? So that congruency that builds trust is critical in everything we do. Hey, I hope I can trust you to show up tomorrow for our next daily distinction. Thanks for sharing this out. So many of you did that today. I really, really appreciate that. And to those that are watching on replay, thank you so much for that. Check out ultimatebusinesssummit.com. Don't forget to use the coupon code Scott. You get $100 off your registration when you go to ultimatebusinesssummit.com and sign up. We'd love to see you in August. Man, we're going to have such a great time, and I hope that you're there for it. I'll look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. Same time as always, right here on Daily Distinction. See you tomorrow.